Meow. We get into the section of key takeaways about the Sage, and it's a little bit more flavorful here with some of my opinions mixed into it. But remember, this is just one dude's opinion. Like, it's an opinion, and honestly, like, I welcome like other people like talking and like debating about it in the comments. Like, it's just like, if you disagree, like, I'm totally open to hearing it. Maybe I just have the wrong perspective, looking at it from the wrong angle. Totally open to it. But this is like the key takeaways, but very flavorful. So really, my first talking point is that I am left concerned about the Sage, because ultimately the Sage's healing paradigm is about literally blasting nonstop and doing whatever it takes to keep blasting. I'm gonna start blasting and I'm gonna keep blasting. But looking at the kit and knowing how Scholar plays, the Sage really does have the kit to do some disgusting, degenerate things, and I love it for that. But I think many people that hate, and there are a lot, that hate the Scholar's style of healing, that look at the Sage as some kind of like new different thing, are going to be largely disappointed. Obviously not all. Like, unless your specific issues with the Scholar are things like the fairy can have a delay, which mind you is largely mitigated by manually placing it in the middle of the arena pre-pull, which for some reason people just don't do or choose not to do or just don't know that that helps that, or fairly flat and outright boring broil spam, or having the ability to micromanage and aim your fairy, or the ability to run out of gas. Actually, never mind, that's still something Sage has for sure. Still gonna look at our co-healer like they're from outer space sometimes. The main thing is, like, if those aren't really your specific issues with the Scholar, Sage is probably not what you're looking for if you already hate the Scholar's healing kit. It kind of does break my heart to say that. Like, it also breaks my heart to read the comments, this is the Scholar main for so many years, that it's just like there have been comments from people just lambasting on Scholar on things that aren't those topics. Like the Scholar memes, yeah, a lot of them were funny. Like, I mean, like, haha, they get like the Scholar waddle. But like, I've seen some of the most horrible comments towards the Scholar saying the entire healing toolkit's scrapped, they should do away with all this and that and this and that. And I look at the Sage and I'm like, a lot of the things you're raising as concerns aren't things that the Sage alleviates in any capacity. Like, I cannot emphasize, the kits are like 85% the same, and thus the way they approach healing is largely the same. The Sage also comes with the added caveat complexity on top of it that while the Scholar's Fairy will auto-aim itself and cast Embrace on targets without your instruction, this is gonna unfortunately not be a thing the Sage has. The Sage needs to manually be cardio weaving to targets non-stop through casting damage spells. While you as a Sage will be penalized for casting Diagnosis or Prognosis, a Scholar with the Fairy also doesn't care. Or if the Scholar runs around the arena like a chicken or something, the Fairy is just going to keep casting. It doesn't give a crap. Where the Sage with poor mobility planning will really suffer. So in the most odd way I can imagine, I feel like for all of the hype that the Sage is getting, it's going to brutally, bitterly, and agonizingly disappoint some people. It might be a meme to say, though I doubt it's caught on yet, but I've been saying it. It's like, white mages never stop casting Glare to heal, and an Endwalker, with how I already know a lot of people play, as well as like people's mentalities towards healing, I'm a healer and I play a healer to heal. Don't ask me to DPS. I hear this all the time. I am on YouTube and it's just like I am hearing this non-stop. This is definitely one of the most, prevalent mentalities out there. So like, a white mage never stops casting Glare to heal. In Endwalker, Sages are gonna be never DPSing, never stopping spamming Diagnosis to DPS, and that's going to lead them to ultimately fall flat on their faces going, Sage is really gimped, Sage is really weak, Sage is terrible, Sage is the worst class I've ever played, because factually, you will fall behind a Scholar by a lot, and likewise from a white mage or ass by a huge margin if you aren't doing that. And to be blunt, at that point you're playing a severely gimped Scholar. Now my second talking point is the exact opposite, where I am genuinely excited for the Sage. So for me, I have loved the Scholar inside out and backwards for almost a decade now. Aurora Reborn was in 2013 and we're in 2021 now, and it's beyond trippy and messed up to think about that, but that's the actual reality. Scholar, however, has had problems that I have talked about at large on my channel. First off is that pet potency scaling is not clear to newer players. Veterans like me know to multiply the value I see by like 0.82 to get the real value. It's just a little bit less than you'd expect. Not too much, but definitely less. Next thing is there is factually some level of delay with the fairy. This is true. It is far from major though, and many people I think overblow it, but the trick is that newer players to Scholar don't know that they need to manually place the fairy. Because like the fairy will prioritize movement over your spell casts. Like try macroing and moving the fairy around with your mouse and see how long you can move it until it finally casts Whispering Dawn. There does seem to be an inherent delay on getting the spells out in quick succession, though it's far different and far less than what a lot of people say. It's just slightly less snappy than double weaving on a job, like say Machinist with Gauss Round and Ricochet. That's boom boom instant. You don't get that with the fairy. Another problem that I personally had a little bit of a problem with was the ghosting of fairy actions, though largely with practice this is something that you could learn to avoid, but the fact that I had to worry about that was initially pretty disturbing. I didn't really like that. Like try casting Fey Illumination then immediately summon Seraph. Where's the Fey Illumination? The Sage doesn't need to worry about that at all. Another thing was that the DPS rotation was not engaging enough for me on Scholar. I love the Scholar of old, but the Broil spamming current version isn't doing that for me. The Sage builds up on like this basic Broil spam, although it's called Dosis for the Sage, and it is definitely still there. You are spamming Dosis, which is definitely a Broil equivalent, but with a host of new tools on top of it, Flagman with the charges, the Serpent Sting, and the rest, it makes me genuinely excited, and it's just like, it builds up enough that I'm like, this will keep me engaged, or likely will. I guess we'll find out in like 4 months. Another thing was fairy control over healing. Many times I just want the fairy to just focus heal on the tank, for instance, rather than heal random chip damage on DPS, which sometimes you really do want it to randomly heal chip damage on DPS. But the loss of control sucked. I used to macro it, many scholars used to macro it, but can't anymore. The auto-targeting is powerful and I don't want to lose that. It's such a huge perk of the Scholar. This is definitely something that is going to make the Scholar preferable to the Sage for so many players, but losing that level of control did suck. Or take Aetherflow, where you can completely go out of gas for theoretically 60 seconds, but you don't really get, how to say it, Scholar, you use Aetherflow, you get 3 stacks off the bat, bam. You don't get gradual stacks of Aetherflow every 20 seconds, which is what the Sage is really essentially getting with their stacks of Serpent Skull. I mean, I get it, just manage it properly, just another thing to learn, but this is one of those quality of life things where it's like, oh, just learn to get over it, you big baby. But it's just like, honestly, I would rather to just get them gradually over time like the Sage does. But like, I keep going on and on. The point is, and I could actually keep going on and on even more, but the point is that I have my grievances with the Scholar, and it is not how it approaches healing in any capacity. I've in fact said on this channel, I love the healing kit of the Scholar. It's intuitive to me, it keeps you on my toes and engaged. I'm thinking proactively about mitigation, about barriers, I love it. And it's really all of those other factors combined, these little quality of life things that make me agonizingly confident that I'm not only going to love the Sage, but also be successful with it. It's in my mind Scholar with tremendous quality of life improvements and a cooler DPS rotation. Bam! This is what I've been asking for on my channel over and over again. This is everything I wanted. So I know I'm happy. It's like the Sage was for all intents and purposes crafted for me. Trust me, I'm not delusional. No crap, it obviously was not actually made for me. But I've never really resonated with a class in any video game so strongly before. I'm just immensely, genuinely happy, and in case my obsession with the Sage hasn't clearly told you that story on this channel, it's gonna be stunningly effective as a healer, and it's always gonna have a place in groups, and it's gonna be very, very fun for players like me. Maybe Scholar becomes like the predominant meta healer. I think that honestly both are like on enough of an even playing field. I don't see that happening, but maybe that happens. I'm still probably gonna be playing Sage no matter what, because like this feels right.